Layering chords is a very common practice, especially in digitally produced genres like EDM, pop, and hip hop. Well-placed chord layers can add a lot of uniqueness to your song and also a lot of energy, but you have to do it right. Adding too many unnecessary layers to your chords can lead to a muddy and unsatisfying result if you don't know what you're doing. So I'm going to show you 8 ways to add energy to your chords with layering techniques that always work. Let's go ahead and get into it. This is a granular layering technique. I like using this in verses and breakdowns. The chords sound like this. You got about 8 bars of those before they start getting really boring and dry. So what I'm going to do is I like to duplicate them onto a new instrument, which is a piano. Then what we do is we have to bounce this in place and turn it into an audio file. And then you're going to need a granular synthesizer. I like using Arturia Pigments. It does come with a free trial if you want to check it out. What you're going to do is grab your audio file and just drag it into the synth and engage its granular engine. And by default, the engine just goes to work. Isn't that gorgeous? I'm going to write down our note. All we need is one note that goes the length of the entire chord progression. We have to make it follow the chords though. So what I'm going to do is grab an automation to make it start on each chord as the chord moves through the progression. Listen to this result. This next technique is called the skinny wide. And it's when you take a set of skinny chords and then you layer them with a set of very wide chords, and the result is a set of very big chords. So our main chord sound that drives the arrangement sounds like this. Very thin sound, as you could see there on the stereo image. So I'm going to duplicate these onto a new track. So here's the same sound, but I'm going to open it up a little. So to make this sound wide, I'm going to add a bunch of voices of unison to it. And already, if we look at our stereo image, we have a pretty wide sound. I'm going to add some layers to this sound and put this up an octave. Turn off the sustain. I'm going to add some reverb to it and then filter it. And then when you're arranging your song, you start with your thin layer and then you work the wide layer in. I feel like I'm on stage. This next one is an excellent way to enhance the chords during the arrangement using a rhythmic layer of chords. So what you do is you take your main chords that drive the song. Mine sound like this. Excellent chords, but they're gonna get old really quick. The layer you want to add to sustained chords like this is something with rhythm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy these, create a new sound, and just paste these chords on this new sound. And then we're going to add an arpeggiator and make it trigger the chords at a speed of 1/8 notes. And when you use that on the transition of your arrangement, you get a really satisfying sound. This next one is to pick the right chord layering technique for your song. In music, there are no wrong answers as to which sounds or chord layering techniques you use in your songs, but there are better decisions than other decisions. For example, I was in my student Braden's project and I was checking his work, and he has this really nice rhythm section. Now the chords he had over that nice bass line, they're really mellow. I thought it would be a good idea to make another chord layer that would complement that bass line a little bit better. So what I did is I took his mellow chords and I rewrote them in this sort of freestyled rhythm. Now here's the rhythm without the dynamic chords. And here's the rhythm with the dynamic chords. This next one is using a vocoder to add harmony to vocals, and we do this with the chords. Again, we're still in my student Braden's project, and he has this vocal that sounds like this.
You make me nervous every time you're with her, but I can be on my worst behavior.
He downloaded this vocal off of the internet, and a lot of the times those vocals don't come with harmony layers. That's okay, we're producers, and we can do that ourselves. You want to add 2 instrument tracks, each with vocoders. I like to use Vocal Synth 2 by iZotope, but there are free options in every DAW as well. And what you want to do is you want to add the chords to the vocoder, and then you want to tell your vocoder to trigger every time the vocals happen. So you do that in Logic just by going up to sidechain and then sidechaining to your vocal. Then we'll get this sound.
You make me nervous every time you're with her, but I can be on my worst behavior.
Now that's an okay sound, but I found with vocoders that I don't like using the root note in the chords, because we can make an instrument, like a real instrument, play the bass notes.
You make me nervous every time you're with her.
And I think it just sounds better when the vocoder plays the higher notes in the chords. Step 2 would be to take these chords, then add them onto that second layer. Now the reason we duplicated these layers is because vocal harmonies like to be wide. So we'll need one layer of harmonies to pan into the left ear and another layer of harmonies to pan into the right ear. I'm going to pick a preset to put into the left ear. Then I'm going to pick a different preset for the second layer and pan it into the right ear. So we get a lot of variety in this performance.
You make me nervous every time you're with her, but I can be on my worst behavior.
This next one is re-articulating the chords. This just means that over the course of your arrangement, you play the same chords a different way. And this changes things up and adds a lot of energy to the arrangement. So here's our chords. How you do this is you load up a new sound that is more plucky and has less sustain. I'm going to use this pluck synth from my orbital pack. Plucky sounds make a great complement to sustained chords like the ones we already have. I'm going to take our chords and just duplicate them. And out of these chords, I'm just going to take the notes that I like and add a new rhythm to it. Now this one takes a lot of trial and error to come up with something that works and that you like, but here's what I came up with. This next one is one of the craziest chord layering displays I've ever seen. And it's when you take a lot of high reverb chord layers and then add an LFO to it. This project was sent to me by my student Kevin. The main chords, they sound like this. And they duplicate them and make them play a different sound for each layer. The next step is to add an LFO to all these reverb layers to tie everything together. So if we take a chord hit and we just crank it at some speed of 4,000 hertz, you can hear you get a nice tight wobble. And at different speeds, this wobble can sound pretty cool. But what happens if we use automation on each chord hit to adjust the speed of this LFO in real time? All the sounds in this project were from my new pack Future Colors. Check out the pack below. This next trick is layering your chords using alternative dynamics. What this means is we take our main chords, and then we add a layer that basically does the opposite of what's going on here. So our main chords are very wide, and they have no rhythm. They're just sustained chords. I'm gonna layer these chords with a very narrow sound, and I'm gonna use a chord pattern that has a lot more rhythm. The sound I'm gonna use for my orbital pack, it sounds like this. We're just gonna write a rhythm that's different than the main chords, and in this case it could literally be any rhythm. So I'm going to do a dotted eighth note rhythm. A cool way to arrange this layer style is to start with the plucked rhythm and then work into the sustained rhythm. This next one is using harmony layers instead of just stacking full sets of chords on top of each other. So sometimes what you're going to run into is you can't fit a bunch of chord layers in your mix. I had a section of my song that sounded like this. These are the chords from earlier. They just sounded a little dry, and I knew I could not layer these because one, it's a really big piano, pianos are one of the hardest instruments to layer, and two, I layer this instrument later in the song. So what do I do now to make this piano come to life? What we could do is we could grab really light, airy instruments and just layer single notes at a time instead of all the notes of the chords. So I loaded up another instrument with a lot of reverb on it. It sounds like this. What I can do to make this piano come to life now is just layer one note per chord. And it doesn't even have to be a specific note. Just pick a note that sounds good. Probably even add one more note. That's pretty, but we can go one step farther. I took this gorgeous self-made pad that I usually use in dark songs like this. So again, one note per chord. This final trick I do in almost every video, and it's by far my #1 most reliable go-to chord layering trick to add energy. You can take any set of chords. That's a beautiful sound, but it's not going to open up by itself. It's too mellow. So what we do is we duplicate these chords onto a fresh new layer. You could use any virtual analog synth. I'm going to use XFER Serum, initialize the preset, and I'm going to get a nice saw wave like this. I'm going to shove some unison in it. Let's go ahead and pull it up an octave. I'm going to filter this a little bit with a mild filter. We're going to go to envelope 1, turn down the sustain, and then up the decay just a little bit. And then what I love to do with a sound like this is add just a bunch of reverb to it. So I actually have 2 reverbs. Valhalla Shimmer, it's a really long-lasting reverb. And then I have Valhalla Vintage Verb, which is very heavy. I'm also going to add some OTT to kind of glue the sound and the reverb together just a little bit. So let's listen to the transition from one section without the layer into the layer. Adds so much space and heaven to it. not even fair. Best layer that you could ever use. That's a video for you guys. If you enjoyed this lesson and would like more resources on learning music production the right way, visit my website in the description below and enroll in my music production program called EDM Bootcamp. This program offers a structured path to learning music production and also comes with access to my inner circle where you can ask questions and share your music for unlimited track feedback with other students. If this sounds like something that interests you, like I said, click on the link below, and I will see you in the next video lesson.